We're speaking to you today from Cunningham Hall on the University of Washington campus. It's a beautiful historic building that dates from the year 1909, and it houses the University of Washington Women's Center, an organization which, to roughly quote its online statement, promotes gender equity on our campus, in our community, and around the world. Another statement I like is that education is the ultimate equalizer. It seemed an appropriate place to host our current podcast because the overriding theme of our next concert at the Philharmonic is women. The title of the concert is Legendary Women, a little bit more about that later. And the two standout pieces on this concert are two United States premieres by women composers, both of whom were told, essentially, to put it at its most blunt, women don't compose, do something else. Women composers have been getting a fairer shake in the last several decades. Still not as fair as they should, but at least we are recognizing the fact that women composers are in our midst and we are programming them increasingly. Again, not as often as we should, but it's getting there. But in the 20th century, it was virtually impossible for a woman to stake a claim in the world of composers and really make a go of it. And unfortunately, because of that, because so many of these superb composers were suppressed and only a very few rose to the top, we had very few to draw conclusions about women as composers. And one of my self-imposed missions in the last several years has been to ferret out some of the music that was totally ignored and forgotten, written in the 20th century by women who were told, don't bother. To that end, the Philharmonic and I have performed in the last several seasons compositions by Marion Bauer, Julia Perry, Helvi Lewiska, Elsa Baren, and probably the one that's closest to our hearts is Ruth Gibbs, an English composer who lived from, I believe, 1921 till 1999. She was a student of Ralph Vaughan Williams and was just not dealt a fair shake at all. And it's only been in the last couple of years, and I'm proud to say in small part because of our efforts on her behalf, that her music is entering the repertoire. There are new recordings appearing, and it is music of such stunning quality that one can only listen and say, why? Why did we not know this before? A couple of years ago, we gave the United States premiere of her second symphony, and that performance was possible in no small part due to the assistance of Ruth Gibbs's son and daughter-in-law, Lance Baker and Victoria Rowe, who live in England, who very kindly made available to us the score and parts to this piece, which I might add were sitting dormant in their attic all those years because nobody had ever taken the trouble to publish it. And this year, we're doing her fourth symphony, a work composed on a much grander scale. The second symphony was, I compared it a little bit to Sibelius's seventh or Samuel Barber's first, in that Gibbs telescoped all of her materials down into one continuous ongoing movement. The fourth symphony is a work of about 35 minutes duration. It's 4 movements long. And for those of you with long memories, we talked about the second symphony being based almost entirely on the idea of 3 ascending notes, or as it appears several times during the symphony. In the case of the fourth symphony, Gibbs bases her materials in virtually all the movements on the idea of the major second. I know you hate it when I get technical, but it's about the simplest interval you can imagine. It's from here to here. If you want to think of it in terms of the piano, it's the first thing you play when you play chopsticks. That is a major second. And in fact, it is those two very pitches, F and G, that begin the whole symphony. She uses that interval harmonically in that she has it stacked on top of itself, answered by another major second below. And this little ostinato in the flutes is what begins the piece. And while that continues underneath, mostly hinged to a second, the E-flat clarinet opens with a solo that is almost primarily constructed on ascending and descending seconds. So the symphony begins like this. The second movement begins with a solo for the English horn, again, which is almost entirely built on the idea of seconds, both major and minor, and the English horn solo goes like this. So second, 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 skip of a third, then descending second, ascending second, descending second, descending second. Okay? So anchored to the idea of seconds. In the third movement, things get even more densely packed. The movement opens with some scurrying chords in the upper strings, and what you're mostly aware of is the uppermost voice in the first violins. So, needless to say, second, second, second. Hear all those seconds? Right below them, the other half of the first violin section is playing. So what you're getting, and I have to do this in slow-mo, so you not only get melodic seconds, but she stacks them one on top of the other, so you're getting harmonic seconds as well. As if that weren't enough, in the second violins, they are doing almost the same thing, a little bit lower. The upper seconds are playing. And the second violins under them are going. So the entire second violin section is playing. So now I have to really go slow-mo, so you're getting this blanket of chords made up entirely of seconds. Okay. I'm not playing it entirely accurately. It's a bit too lumpy to be played on the piano, but you get the idea. It's all seconds. Finally, in the last movement, she again opens with a series of chords. And what you're mostly drawn to is the ascending fourths in the first violins. Well and good, but in the second violins and violas underneath, you have a series of chords that keep weaving back and forth on the interval of, you guessed it, a major second. So those seconds are in there, absolutely embedded into the fabric. When all the strings are playing at the beginning, you get this. But again, remember that underneath, it's these seconds that are binding the whole thing together. And over that introduction, the oboe comes in with a solo based on, well, guess what? The other United States premiere on this concert is by Mel Boni. Actually, her full name was Melanie Boni, but because of, again, the prevailing prejudice against women as composers of the time, she shortened her name so that people encountering her name on concert programs or scores wouldn't necessarily be biased against her, thinking that possibly it was the work of a man. utterly ridiculous, but that's what she had to do at the time. She was a contemporary of Debussy. As a matter of fact, they were classmates together for a while. She studied with César Franck, which probably explains a lot of the beautiful chromatic writing of hers. She wrote in almost all genres. There's chamber music, lots of piano music, choral music, symphonic music. She wrote a big set of piano pieces called Legendary Women. And 3 of those she arranged as a set of orchestral works, movements inspired by Salome, Ophelia, as in Hamlet, and Cleopatra. And we are going to be playing the symphonic poem, The Dream of Cleopatra, from this suite of music about legendary women. The remainder of the concert is going to turn to the world of opera. Beethoven's only opera, Fidelio, is one of the greatest operas in which the central character is its heroine, a woman who undergoes incredible psychological torture in that she takes a job disguised as a man in the prison where her husband is being unjustly held as a political prisoner. Beethoven's deeply felt notions of democracy and fairness come to the fore all over this opera, certainly no more so than in the ending, where the villain is vanquished and truth and justice rule the day. And then we're going to have 4 arias from 3 of the greatest French operas of the 19th century, Cléopâtre by Massenet, Carmen by Bizet, and Samson and Delilah of Camille Saint-Saens, in which the leading characters are women of considerable strength and fortitude, and these are going to be sung by a great friend of the Philharmonic, mezzo-soprano Jenny Knapp. I hope that you'll all be able to come to this concert of music by and about and for legendary women.